Okay, sorry about that. All right, so welcome to the Fossil Free CU public comment training. So to start out, just something about preparing your comment. You will have about 2 minutes or exactly 2 minutes to give your comment. And 2 minutes goes by super quickly. So figure out beforehand, like, what you're the most comfortable with. Like, different people have different speaking styles that work for them. So what I like to do is prepare my comment beforehand, rehearse it, time myself, make sure it's 2 minutes. Some people that feels like too kind of, I don't know, structured or machine-like. So they're more comfortable preparing a list of bullet points and then practicing speaking for 2 minutes. And other people just like speak openly from the heart. So with this, it can be very, very compelling, and yeah, very like emotionally impactful to speak openly from the heart. But there is a risk of running over time when you just like are really, in what you're saying. So yeah, just figure out, there's no right or wrong way to give a comment, but figure out what works for you. And just like there's many different ways to approach, how to give your comment, there's also many different ways to approach the topic that you're speaking about. So you can speak, and you probably should speak from personal experience. For example, like telling a personal story, like how you or your family or your friends have been personally impacted by the issue that you're speaking about, whether it's climate change or, being aware that your college is investing in fossil fuels, whatever it is, like speaking from a personal experience is a really good way to kind of start out your comment. And then also citing facts, statistics, talking points, etc., is another good way to get your point across. So you might want to only tell a personal story and have that be the focus of your comment, or you might want to only focus on facts and talking points, and that's fine too. Really, it's just about what you're comfortable with. I personally like to start with personal experience and then use that to kind of grab attention for then transitioning into some facts and statistics to kind of round out the argument. But it's really good, no matter how you decide to approach your comment, it's really good to begin and end your comment with a clear, specific, and concise ask. And that's the kind of thing that should be like decided and coordinated like beforehand, like everyone kind of has an agreement of like what we're asking, just so that like going into the meeting, there's a very united voice. Like we've got one very, very clear demand that we're pushing for. So just like general tips on how to structure your comment. So it's good to open with your first and last name, say how you're connected to CU, whether you're a student, alum, etc. Just, say like what your personal stake is, as a member of the CU community. It's always good practice to thank whoever you're speaking to for the opportunity to speak. And then right off the bat, stating your clear, concise, and specific ask is a good way to kind of open your comment. And then in kind of the middle part, I often start with like a personal reason about why I care about the issue, why I'm personally impacted by the issue. Personal stories and anecdotes are a really powerful way to grab attention. Even using like sensory details and imagery, like, maybe your house was threatened by a fire, like what did the smoke smell like, things like that, where the person listening can really like get into what you're saying, like on a very empathic level. That's a really good way to capture people's attention. And then it's also a good idea to give a few key arguments in favor of divestment, using some key facts to bolster your statement, but try not to get too like heady or wordy, because you might like lose people. So try and keep it very like clear and to the point, and citing a few key like numbers or facts or statistics is good. But if you get to like a string of just like numbers and statistics, people will start to tune out. So just like, you only have 2 minutes, so figure out what the most essential things are to like balance your argument. And it might be good for the group like beforehand to try and coordinate with others who are testifying, just to make sure that everyone's touching on different points. Because if there's 100 arguments in favor of divestment and everyone can only cite 2, and everyone happens to cite the same 2 arguments, then you're missing like 98 arguments. So yeah, I would just like suggest coordinating beforehand if that's possible. And then to end, it's good to just close your statement by reiterating your clear, concise, and specific ask. So that's like the lingering message. So getting more into like the personal stories. So applying story of self is a really, really good way to ground your comment and also really build kind of an emotional, empathic response to what you're saying. So you start out by identifying your own personal stake in this. So like, what is your skin in the game? Like, what is your personal reason for being involved in this? This could be anything from being personally impacted by environmental events to, you know, having really bad climate anxiety to the point where you can't sleep at night and it's affecting your schoolwork, or, you know, just kind of the dis-ease of having systemic issues violate your values. Really anything that you bring to the table is totally valid. And stake is really important in climate activism. It's a way to ground yourself in what you're doing. And it's also a way for people to connect and resonate with your experiences. It adds like a human element. Emotional impact really does spark action. I've seen, you know, things where people testified and the people listening were like, you know, brought to tears basically. And so it really can have an impact when you speak from that more emotional level. And people, you know, can't like argue against or try and disprove your personal experience. And it's also important for solidarity work, making sure that you're grounded in your own personal stake instead of trying to like be a savior for someone else, or like, you know, have this kind of like, I don't know, holier than thou. Like I've fallen into that before. So it's just really important to ground yourself in, you know, why you're personally, you know, at stake in this. So just a little more on story of self. So there's this really good resource, Marshall Ganz's Structure of a Public Narrative, which is linked here. And I've shared these slides in the chat. So if you want to like go back and check out all the resources and links, it's also in the Fossil Free CU folder, so you can check the slide deck out there. But there's a few, you know, kind of a way to structure a public narrative to really build a powerful story. So you have your story of self, which is your personal story that shows why you were called to do what you've been called to do. And then there's the story of us, which kind of takes your story of self and brings it into a broader community context. So it's like a collective story that illustrates the shared purposes, goals, or vision of a community or organization. So that could be like, you know, starting with your personal story of why you're concerned about the climate crisis, and then expanding to the CU community and how the CU community is involved in this. And then the story of now is the challenge that the community now faces, the choices it must make, and the hope to which we can aspire. So really giving the urgency to this situation and saying like, this is what's happening now, and this is what we need to do about it. And then you link those three together to create a public narrative. And that's a really one really effective way to craft your comment. And then, yeah, just a few like top line facts and asks to cite. So some key facts that you could cite for your public comment at the Board of Regents meeting. CU has over 270 million invested in fossil fuels, about 5% of total investments. You probably already know all this because you're more involved in this than I am, but just like, yeah, some key things. The movement's been calling for divestment since 2013. The Fossil Free CU petition has reached nearly 1,700 signatures. It's 2 away from 1,700. So if you can get 2 more people to sign it, then you can say a really clean, crisp number like 1,700. Yeah, that CU is lagging behind 1,560 other institutions that have committed to divesting. And then the key ask, I just took this from the Fossil Free CU petition, but of course, like feel free to adapt it as you see fit. But we call on the University of Colorado to commit to divesting the University of Colorado Systems Treasury Pool, retirement funds, and endowments from the fossil fuel industry and reinvesting in a just energy transition no later than the end of 2027. So that's a really good ask. It's clear, it gives a timeline, it's specific. It highlights the 3 different funds that you want divested. So it's really like a clear, concise ask. And I just linked the Fossil Free CU petition in here in case anyone wanted to like reference it quickly and draw more language from there, because it's a really beautiful document. And then I also put in some just like key divestment talking points. So the financial case. Climate risk is financial risk. Colorado has lost $37 billion since 1980, $16 billion of which are attributed to disasters in the last 5 years. There's a report you can cite. The fact that fossil fuel divestment should be understood as a defensive financial strategy. As the world takes action to decarbonize, fossil fuel investments risk becoming stranded assets. And across the world, more and more institutions are divesting from fossil fuels, and this trend is likely to increase. So CU should be a leader in that transition. Research is showing that investors actually aren't even financially harmed by divestment. Reports by BlackRock and Maketa separately concluded that investment funds have experienced no negative financial impacts from divesting from fossil fuels. They actually found evidence of improvement in fund return. And there's also a recent report that was commissioned by Boulder County that found that Colorado's pension fund lost $2.7 billion by not divesting from fossil fuels. So things like this, where it's like a crisp kind of like, very accessible way of framing something, dropping talking points like this in your argument can make a really effective argument. There's also a really good legal case to be made for divestment. The fossil fuel industry is increasingly facing legal liability, with over 1,000 climate-related legal cases filed since 2015, many of which are targeting the fossil fuel industry directly. There's a legal case that created a precedent regarding fiduciary responsibility that affirmed that once a fiduciary is aware of a risk, action must be taken to address it. So this is a good thing to cite, just to say, like, you talk about fiduciary responsibility, but according to this case, you actually have a responsibility to address risk once it's been identified in your portfolio, which clearly climate change is a risk that they should be taking into account. And I found this really good toolkit by Divest Harvard, which I dropped in, which has really good legal arguments specifically for college fossil fuel divestment campaigns, and some instructions on how to file a legal complaint for fossil fuel divestment. So I thought that was a really, really cool resource. I've heard that Harvard's decision to divest was prompted specifically by the legal complaint that was brought forward by students. So just wanted to drop that in. And then, there's also obviously a very strong moral case, especially as college students. You're making an investment in your future, but by investing in fossil fuels, the college is investing your money to, harm your future. And they're investing money in ways that actively harm students, and climate change disproportionately impacts young people, communities at the front lines of oil and gas development, low-income communities, communities of color, and the global south. So things like that, which create a strong moral argument. And then there's a divestment talking points fact sheet that has some more like reports, details, arguments that you can cite. There's a ton of resources at your disposal to make a really strong argument. And then I just created 2 like sample testimonies. These aren't real people. They might be real people, but I just made them up to kind of like give an example of different ways that you can structure your comment. So this one's more of like a personal story. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you want to like go back and read it, it's basically like someone who started their freshman year, and then the Marshall Fire happened, and now Colorado doesn't feel so safe for them. So that's more of a personal story. And then there's example testimony using more like talking points and more of a financial argument. This person's hypothetically like an econ major and can use their economics background to give like a financial argument for divestment. So your testimony could be any combination of these. These are kind of 2 different sides of the spectrum, but your comment can like combine those. It can be, one or the other. It's really what you want to bring to the table. And just some quick things on registering to speak. So the public comment section of the Board of Regents meeting will begin at 1 p.m. and registration is in person with a sign-up sheet. So just be there in person and sign up on the sign-up sheet before 1 p.m. I think Bridget said that there's a plan to arrive early between 12 and 12:45 to give plenty of time to register and prepare. And then here's the address for the meeting. I hope that's correct. I assume it is, but yeah, correct me if anything I just said was wrong. And then when you're at the moment of finally presenting your comment, so during the hearing, just be present and in the room and listen for your name to be called, because if you happen to be in the bathroom when your name is called, then you don't get to speak probably. Once your name is called, take a deep breath. If you're nervous, remember that you're doing important and amazing work. And just, kind of ground yourself. You can give yourself that minute to just kind of like have that grounding space. And then give your comment, limit it to 2 minutes. Be respectful, use proper titles when addressing the regents, be courteous, thank regents for their time, identify your relationship to the CU community, use a few key facts or talking points to bolster your statement, state and reiterate a clear and specific ask, and be professional, avoid informal language, curse words, etc. And yeah, maintain a general tone of like firm and respectful. And yeah, that's it for my presentation. If anyone has any questions or any clarifications, or...
you all have to clap again because you all are muted.
That was great. Thanks, Giselle. Yes.
Thanks.
I was watching the Right Here Right Now panel they had on like 5-minute commitments, and there wasn't too much in there, but my boy Ben, who was the speaker for UN, one of the things that excited him most was the legal argument, and that the cases around the world have like really solid legal grounds. So the hope he kept trying to put out there was like, look at these legal arguments going on and see if there's room for that in other spaces as well. So it's fascinating that you brought it up. Oh, you can't actually probably you can see me, but that you brought it up.
Yeah, I've heard I've heard that especially with like the Harvard case, that the legal argument was like a key factor in getting the college to divest from fossil fuels. And there's a difference between a legal complaint and a legal case. So you can file a legal complaint as a student body without necessarily like initiating like a full legal case with lawyers and everything. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not like super expert on this, but the toolkit that I dropped in the slide deck has a it's like a really comprehensive resource of like, you know, things to consider. Could use. It definitely, I think, would put here in the hearts of agents.
Okay, we say the last 2 sentences one more time. It cut out for a moment.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that like it is a very effective strategy that could put fear in the hearts of the regents, but it's something that would need to be like thought through and prepared for a lot. But it would be kind of like a big step, I think.
Cool.
I don't know if you can hear me still.
Now we can.
Yeah.
We haven't heard it though.
Yeah, I heard it too.
We should add the legal argument. Do we have someone doing legal? Oh. It's going.
Any other questions for Giselle?
Speakers are 8. Oh, there isn't a one.
They'll bounce likely between fossil-free CU people and like other comments.
I know UCW is going and talking to them, and they're getting people to go and speak on behalf of UCW as well, like the workers union or Boulder. They want to raise RA pays, so they're going to be talking.
Okay.
Do you have a contact? Yeah, I can talk to them if you want me to. They're gonna be. I'm gonna be actually. I have like an event with YDSA at 6:30, and they're like coming and speaking. So if you want me to like,
Already be answering them. I'm not sure. Or sorry, Ellie. Like I'm not sure if that was the same group or different.
it's the same group. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe Ellie's already.
Yeah, she may have talked to them. I can also be like, yeah, okay, we'll reach out. Figure it out.
Well, I'm curious if, Giselle, if you think there's certain arguments that bear repeating. I thought we only had like 8 speakers, but like, which ones do we repeat the most often? I mean, everyone has a personal story to share, but everyone does a personal story that takes up 2 minutes and they won't hear any of the stats. So obviously you have to have some sort of balance in there, but all of the stats can be kind of, you know, I don't know if these guys are gonna be taking notes based on our comment or anything, like sometimes it's hard to get numbers to stick. So what kind of balance do you advocate for?
Yeah, so I think the arguments that were in the slides, I think that offers like a good kind of overview of some of the key, it's not a definitive list, obviously, but I think those are some of the like key arguments that I've identified that support divestment. I think, yeah, as much as everyone could like coordinate, even like listing out like a bunch of key talking points that you want them to hear, and then people just like pick one or two and then just like weave those into their comments. I think, you know, definitely repeating the like key ask is probably what should be repeated. But then besides that, I think as like diverse as you can make your arguments, just so they're hearing like, you know, if each person says a whole new array of arguments in favor of divestment, I think it'll make like a much stronger case overall than if people repeat like a few things. But if there are some things that you really think bear repeating, then I think, you know, coordinating that as well makes sense.
So what we're planning to do is like have the key arguments go first, like first we're gonna have the two student government representatives go, then John Steinauer to do the financial argument, and then we have those key, like 5 key arguments, but now we have the legal one that we need to add, but so we'll coordinate on like distributing those.
Okay. If we accidentally repeat on any points, it's not gonna come off like super badly about. Okay.
No, there's no harm
Try
in that.
not to, but.
We might run up against a time barrier if other people are speaking. So I think that's our biggest cutoff for this time around. I went there today
So how was
to
it?
check it out. I guess if we have more questions, so if Giselle wants to leave, she can, but I have some pictures I can show you all.
Any other questions for him?
You said you had information for the legal argument. Will you be sharing that with us?
It's in the slides.
Oh, based. Okay, thank you, Giselle.
Anything else?
So yeah, sort of another one. Would it be rude to address like specific regions by name? Or like to mention the 3 ones that I've met, for example, and say, hi, good to see you again, like to kind of call them out? Good idea, bad idea. The mom says it's a bad idea.
I mean, I think the way that it's said is probably like a factor. I feel like it's not necessarily a good idea or a bad idea. I think if you do address regents, like address them by their title, like
Right.
regent, last name, good to see you, you know, we had a conversation. Yeah, I think making sure that, well, I don't know. I think it's up to your judgment. If you're trying to like make people feel like called out or put on the spot, that could like go, you know, it could make them feel like threatened and maybe make them feel closed off. It could also make them feel like the spotlight's on them and they really need to act. If you're, you know, calling them out to say like, oh, we had this really awesome conversation, it's so good to see you here. I think there like context is important. So I think it's up to your judgment. But yeah, I would say just generally when addressing them, use like a respectful, courteous tone and like probably say like regent, last name.
Like I had a great conversation with Regent James, and it wouldn't be like, I would not sound sarcastic at all if I said to her, hey, we've talked once before and had a great conversation. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Like that could be just gotta ignore Vandrew's existence. So I don't come off too badly. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you, like say it in like a positive, friendly tone, I think that could like build a personal connection and like be good.
If you want to explore some Mean Girls-esque statement possibilities, we can chat sometime.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Cool. Well, thank you, Giselle, for your time and the slides.
Yeah, those are
You are welcome to hang out, of course. But thank you so much for the time you already given us.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. You were all awesome. I guess one quick thing I wanted to say is and this is kind of like, I guess related but different from the public comment stuff. But I was talking to the executive director of 350 Colorado, Micah, a few days ago. And she was saying that she was having a conversation with someone, she didn't say who, but like someone in like the CU system, like one of the, I don't know if they're a decision maker or like someone who's close to decision makers. But she said to like let you guys know that the pressure is like really having an impact, like behind the scenes, like they're feeling the pressure, and like they were saying like keep it up, like, you know, not to like promise a victory, you know, prematurely, but that like the pressure really is having an impact, and like, you know, that we could see some wins like pretty soon, theoretically. So I wanna just like say that softly, but yeah, she was just saying like keep up the good work, like they are absolutely feeling the pressure. So good job.
Also, Giselle, I just checked the petition and we're at 1701.
Yay!
We can now say over 17.
Yay.